Chris Bates, welcome to the Primal Foundations podcast.
Good to be here. Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Kind of backstory of how I met you. It was keto. I almost said KetoCon. It was Hack Your
Yeah.
Health, Hack Your Health, not KetoCon. And I was at. I can't even remember what of the breakout sessions I was at. And then Chris came up there. He's like, "Hey guys, that the speaker isn't coming. They're held up, but I'm here. I'm gonna answer some questions." And then you just started taking the questions from the room. And then I figured out that you're friends with James Lehman and just started talking with you and then started chatting. And then I was like, I gotta get this guy on the podcast.
Yeah. It's, James, the carnivorist, or carnivorous chats, I really like James a lot. And I met him at Hack Your Health / formerly known as KetoCon last year. And it's just, his seal of approval means a lot. So he's like, oh yeah, Tony's a good dude. His podcast is great. You should connect. That's all I needed to hear. And I noticed you and remind me of the other guy's name.
Casey Ruff.
Yeah, you guys were like really, I could tell like some people in the audience, they're either engaged or disengaged. And I could tell you guys were like sizing me up, but in a good way. You're like, okay, what's this guy really saying? And I noticed you were back in the corner, really like chewing on what I was saying even before we met. So I appreciate that a lot because it shows me that you are invested in what people are saying and you're analyzing, which I think more people need to do.
And that's the big thing. We go there, it's good. You make the connections with people, right? That's a big part of it. But we also want to step in and learn from other people because I don't have all nobody has all the answers, but that's why we go there. One, there's that connection piece, but two, but pulling stuff for ourselves and also people that we work with and that people can hear and it can help out. And that's what I want to get into now is, you are a coach and many coaches with their careers, it's due to a personal health struggle or transformation or health journey. Can you share your story and describe how your journey into coaching began too?
Yeah, it's very different from, I think, a lot of coaches that you might find in the holistic health or even any kind of health realm. It actually started with mental health and kind of self-image more than anything. I was in middle school, and in middle school, as a kid, everybody's opinion of you has a lot more weight than it should. And as we grow up and we age, and then when we mature, we realize that like what I'm drawn to intuitively, that's what I should lean into. That's what matters. And I think I wasn't very confident in middle school. I was very skinny. I didn't really have good reaction time and all these other things. And all the other boys were hitting puberty before me. And so I started to get in my head about it. And I got bullied a little bit too. And the problem wasn't the bullying though. It was that like, I believed that they were right. I believed that everything they were saying, it was just teenage boys being teenage boys. But I was like, yeah, I am kind of a piece of shit, right? I am a little bit of a turd. And that lasted through sophomore year of high school. And, to be frank, I'm sorry to, get pretty raw and pretty deep right off the bat, but I wasn't quite sure I wanted to continue living anymore. And I had a note to my parents, and I had a bullet chambered in a gun, and I actually still have the bullet. It sits on my bedside table to this day to remind me that like it never is that bad. And then this crazy circumstance happened where like I was getting ready. My mom ran down the stairs, and I found out that a good buddy of mine had tried to overdose, but failed, luckily. But I saw what that did to his mental state and to his family. And so it actually saved me. And I told him that years later, but it took me a while, to process that. The point of all this is like, I realized that it's never that bad and we're in our own heads. And I was like, how did I get here? And that's where the health came in. I was like, you know what? I have the ability to put on muscle, to be more confident, to live a life where I love myself versus thinking I'm a piece of shit. And so I started experimenting. And so the obvious answer is right, putting on muscle. So that was like my first of, what would you say? Like mile marker of quests. And there was a subsequent quest after every one, because every experiment I tried to put on muscle, it led me to like, oh, what about diet? Or how do I maximize my natural hormones? Or what other things can I do to add to this concoction to make it more potent so I can just live, be not only like looking and feeling great, but also understanding that I worked hard enough to earn my own respect. And there's a lot to unpack from there. So I'll just end this thought by saying, what I realized was that actually going through the process of maintaining a healthy life actually kept me mentally healthy. And so then I thought, well, what if other people are struggling with this and they're struggling to see, to build confidence and to be healthy, and they just not know where to start? It's like, I've been through a lot, especially now that it's been 14 years of experimentation since that time. So maybe I can help people learn what I learned faster, so they don't have to necessarily stumble through all the things I stumbled through, and give them most of the benefits in a condensed window. And so most of the people I serve aren't necessarily in that self-loathing state, but they're in a state where they're not sure how to move forward. It seems overwhelming. And it does have a toll on their mental health. So I don't really advertise it that way, but that's like a happy silver lining, or unintended byproduct of people helping people work on their foundation of health, is that they feel so much better and they look at themselves differently.
I appreciate you just sharing that story. And we're finding it's not just men too, male and female that are going, and it's really even harder now with just the social media, the technology, the connectiveness. You mentioned kind of that bullying piece. There's it used to be you get bullied or somebody will say something, then you go home and that's your safe space. But that now you don't have a safe space.
Yeah.
People that you're on Instagram, people are saying things, a Snapchat. But I appreciate you sharing that story because a lot of people are falling into that category. And it's good to see somebody that, acknowledges it, and also that there is that silver lining. There's light at the end of the tunnel, and you can work to dig yourself out of whatever hole you feel that you're in.
Yeah, there's a kind of a, like with each step forward, there's a new challenge. The new challenge, and what a devil's advocate might say after hearing that as well, like, okay, what if you're mentally weak though, and you lose your health, whether you're an injury or you're at a time of your life when you're busy, and so you have to take a step back. Will those thoughts return, or will you be able to keep them at bay and realize like it's okay, like I'm still overall more healthy and still have that self-confidence? And I've had people bring that up to me before, and I think it's a good point. And I think that's why focusing on that for so long solidifies your image of yourself. So it's like a lifelong journey. It's not like a 4 or 6 month or even a year or two journey. And part of that journey is knowing, okay, life is throwing these other things at me, so I need to take my expectations of myself down a level. It's not that I'm not having expectations, it's not that I'm putting forth effort, but I need to proportionately scale my efforts to something that's achievable and reasonable without diminishing my own opinion of myself. And so that was a challenge that took me a long time to overcome, because I mentally weak might sound harsh, but that's how I would have told myself that, and it's like, but now actually probably just in the last 2 or 3 years, I'm realizing, oh, there's different seasons each year in terms of challenges, and how you want to portion your time. So it's okay to dial back to like the minimum viable action to maintain the health gains that you have acquired through blood, sweat, tears, and other things. But yeah, so sorry, a little of a spin-off. I just think it's really important because it's a good question to ask once you get to that phase and you're really working on your health.
And you mentioned expectations. Do you feel that people kind of get frozen when it's either too much expectation on themselves or too much expectation from others?
For sure. I do believe that most of us that are pushing for something, sometimes we have an all or nothing, um, what would you say, a kind of lens. And that's problematic, because then if you have these high expectations, it's very difficult to achieve that without perfection. And I do think that perfect can be the enemy of good. And so if we let that be true, as opposed to getting 80% of the way there, reaping the benefits and doing better the next time, we just say, oh, I failed. And then we get none of the benefits and we move on to something else, or we have these very harsh dialogues in our head. So yeah, I do think having really high expectations of ourselves, whether that's placed by us or others, or maybe a combination, is really problematic.
And you start to go down this path of kind of self-healing and researching. You talked about building muscle. What are some things that you started to do to start to, I wouldn't say feel better about yourself, but that's not the right word, but just to kind of just feel a little bit more whole?
Yeah, it sounds so cliche, but I'm finding that cliches more than often, yeah, more often than not are very true. That loving the process was one of the beautiful things. So I actually fell in love with discovering what worked and what didn't versus the results of the experiments that showed me what worked and what didn't. And that was a really beautiful thing. So it started with, like, I've gone through a certain amount of experiments on the diet side of things, on the workout side of things, and then on the lifestyle side of things. And so with the diet, it started with just like bulking and cutting, the kind of bodybuilder stuff. And I found that that wasn't sustainable. And I gained a lot of weight and I lost a lot of weight. And then I was almost at the net neutral. Like I didn't really gain muscle or lose fat. And after, years of trying that, and I've tried other kinds of diets, like it started with, vegan and then vegetarian. And then I moved to paleo. I even tried fruitarian, pescatarian for a time. And then it went to back to a different version of paleo, keto, but kind of like what I would say dirty keto, like there were processed foods in there. I was cutting for my wedding. And then I went finally to like the animal based route. And after that, I've been doing that for 3.5 years now. I've been doing different experiments under that umbrella with like macronutrients, supplements, meal timing, stuff like that. And on the lift side, it was, yeah, bodybuilding splits, CrossFit, the German volume training, I don't know if you've heard of Cali moves, the different kinds of plyometrics, calisthenics, all kinds of stuff, Olympic lifting especially. And so I just like experimenting for each of these things, like 6 to 12 months at a time, and being like, what do I like, what I don't like, take a nugget. And then I'm kind of building my own custom tailored concoction of like, okay, now I know how this affects me. Try to envision where I want to be in 5, 10 years, and use that nugget in combination with all the other things I've tried and build out something that's unique to what not only my goals, but what I enjoy, because I am loving the process so much. And it really, again, I talked earlier about unintended happy byproducts, was that I loved every day because it was an adventure in a small way, because each day built out was contributing to a 6 to 12 month experiment. And I love the process of learning that way, but learning by doing.
I, I'm going to interject on this little piece, and we're going to get to like some of the physical aspects. German volume training really sucks. That sucks.
So you did it as well?
I did a little program of it, and
What did you think?
that's a lot of like that's a lot, man. I think I was doing like 10 by 10s, like I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
hundreds at like I forget what the percentage was. I'm doing my back squats or whatever. I'm like, this is, and I'm not that I'm old. I'm 35. Like I feel like I'm pretty good shape. But when I'm walking
Yeah.
away and I'm like, I can't even train the next day, I'm like, something's wrong. Like something's wrong.
Yeah,
This
it
is
is
too much.
not for the faint of heart, for sure.
And it's pretty funny because I train some of the athletes at my school that I work at,
Mm-hmm.
and they come into the weight room, and somebody gave one of the kids a German volume thing, and he was asking me about it. I'm like, I don't think that's the right program for you, but he had
Mm-hmm.
like a trainer on the outside, and we started looking into it, and like one of the like it wasn't necessarily the benefits. Yes, there were like these physical benefits, but it plainly states that, oh, it's going to make you mentally tough.
Mm.
Like that's one of the pieces of German volume training. I'm like, leave it up to the Germans, man. They're gonna get you.
Yeah,
They're gonna
that's
get you mentally
true.
solid. But
It reminds me of, real quick, of 75 hard, and this might be controversial. I think I don't really see a lot of health benefits from 75 hard, but I think there's a lot of mental benefits that come from adhering to a ridiculous routine for a certain amount of time and mentally persevering. I think there's a lot of psychological reinforcement there.
yeah, I mean, we could stay on this and we can circle back. But
Yeah.
I 100% agree. Like I've done marathons. I've done an Ironman. I've done the David Goggins 4x4x48. You know, raising money for charity, all kinds of stuff.
Wow.
And I'm not opposed to doing hard things. Like I'm
Hmm.
all for that. But it's also we get like you were saying earlier, we get this. I got to go 100% in, stay hard, go hard, like just this whole, and it's unsustainable. You
Hmm.
can't do it all the time, and then you're either going to get injured or you're gonna lose your momentum because you can't
Yep.
continuously train, you can't do those things. And I tell people that they're like, well, you did an Ironman, so you're healthy or something like that. And I'm like, listen, I did the Ironman and I do marathons to complete that task.
Yeah.
It's not, I'm not saying anything about health. I'm saying I'm doing this sport to complete the task.
Hmm.
It has nothing to do with my health. And when people like, oh, I'm a runner, I'm this and that, they associate that with being healthy. But really, if you're doing like tons of miles, 75 hard, going to do 2 spin classes every day,
Yeah.
it's just too much. Like, is that kind of where you're at and how you feel?
Yeah, that's very much where I'm at and how I feel. And in fact, for my presentation at Hack Your Health, that's what I was mostly talking about is, and it's different, right? If an individual wants to do this task as you so aptly categorized it, that's great. Challenge yourself, complete the task, but then have the wherewithal to analyze your situation. And just like you were saying, is this sustainable? Do I enjoy this? Do I want this to be part of every day of my life going forward until it's not, or for forever? And I just think there's a lot of ways with our time and our attention, and I think attention is even more scarce than time. We don't want our attention and time to be split so many different ways that we can't do the things well that really matter to us or that we really enjoy. And I think that's where I'm a big balance person. And I probably have a biased perspective that leans that way. But I really believe in the and function versus the or function. And if you're going to train for a marathon, you're going to do it's an or because you're going to have to do that in lieu of a lot of other things. It takes a lot, not just on the psychological side, like the amount of hours with training. You're not gonna get stronger in the gym. It's probably going to wear in your central nervous system. So it's very much an or. So I'm an and guy. I'm like, how can I be physically fit, enjoy my lifts, and enjoy my life in conjunction with one another? And I look for the diminishing return. And this is what I help my clients with too. It's based off my goals and my activities. How far can I push it before I start to get diminishing returns? And I stop there. That's my sweet spot. And then we cross-reference that with everything else that I'm doing or they're doing and say, okay, where can I really push the envelope to? But then I start to experience diminishing returns. And let's make sure we don't go beyond that point. And once you've done that when it comes to business, relationships, working out, nutrition, and all that, you find that you're actually doing 20% of the work in each category and getting 80% of the results versus going 100% in terms of the work and only getting like 90 to 95% of the results. So that it's just not proportionate in terms of the scaling of your output or your rewards.
100% agree. So now you're getting into, you tried all the diets, you tried
Mm.
every program. You're basically charcuterie boarding this thing, right? You're kind of like,
Yep.
I like this, let's put this on the board. I like this. So what else besides the nutrition? So you got into the animal base space. Was that kind of before or after you worked with Heart and Soil?
That was actually before. So
Hmm.
I got interested in the carnivore approach, but I didn't really jump the gun on that or pull the trigger on that. I got really interested in this animal based idea. And so I started doing that even before I found Paul in a way, because I was like, oh, well, I want to keep carbohydrates in, but I like the idea of eating more meat. And then I found Paul Saladino and I was like, oh, this is like the best of both worlds. And so I cut out some of my whole foods carb sources and just had mostly fruit and honey and then a lot of venison at the time because I was living in Virginia and there's just a lot of deer. And then I was like, okay, well, I need to have no saturated fat. So I went down this rabbit hole and I felt so much better compared to all the other diet experiments that I had done that I thought, okay, I don't know why, because I know that I've tried so many diets. This can't be the one that I do for the rest of my life, but there's something special about it. So I'm going to sit here for a while and really let my saturate myself, pun intended, with
Hmm.
this experience. And then I just saw that Heart and Soil posted something on Instagram for a position. They're very clever because they didn't really give a job description. They just had a vague title. And I think that's because they wanted people to not tailor their applications to the title, the job description. They wanted to find the right person because the person was just going to be that way. And it so worked out that I wasn't going to apply at first because there's all these people commenting that were massive influencers and doctors and like nutritionists. And I wasn't any of those things. I was just an avid experimenter. But I've been trying it and I loved it so much that it gnawed at me. And I woke up in the middle of the night and went upstairs and just worked until probably 5 a.m. writing this cover letter and designing this application that was just me. And it was straight from the heart because I wanted to work there so bad. I didn't hear anything for a while. And then they reached out and I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then we had an interview and they flew me out and I took a week off of work and I just worked with them for a whole week because I really wanted to know if this was the right spot. And then I felt it deep down, you know, in my gut and in my heart that it was the right move. So I uprooted everything in Virginia that I knew, including leaving a marriage that what I probably needed to do before then, and just took a chance. Before Heart and Soil was a big thing, before Paul was a big thing, and I believed in it, and it panned out. And working there was a real treat. I learned a ton, and I got to see a lot of people like you and me go through all of these experiments. So it gave me, before that, I had some anecdotes outside of myself. I've worked with some people on the side. I had friends doing it. I was trying to help people in my community, but then I got thousands of anecdotes through the Heart and Soil Network. So I could see what was really the trends of what was working for people and what wasn't. And that opened a whole new world of possibilities and it helped me narrow down the experiments I wanted to do going forward based off the trends that I saw in large groups of people.
Do you get any, I guess we're just pushback, you know? And then Paul was more carnivore and he was like animal based. And I'm all for, again, I'm going to steal one of your phrases here. I'm going to put in there. I think it was something that goes like experimentation over dogma, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that people got to figure out what they want. But working for Heart and Soil, kind of nose to tail, animal based, including fruit, no vegetables kind of thing. Vegetables are going to kill you. Get any pushback from, you know, either other organizations or just people in your circle?
Yeah, a lot, honestly, especially before I moved from Virginia. Well, I mean, when I was vegan, I got more pushback. But then, or I should say, when I was eating a vegan diet, I got a lot more pushback for that year from friends and family and other people. And then when I went animal based, it was the classic saturated fat and cardiovascular health and all those kinds of things that we normally hear or most people are concerned with, even cancer too, because of mTOR and all these other things. But then it's interesting, Austin, I think was already kind of evolving in that direction. So I say post COVID as if it was like that was a definitive date, and it wasn't. But it was like when Austin was opening back up, is when I moved there and started with Heart and Soil. And at that time, there was also a big movement for regenerative farming in the area and buying local and all these other things. So I actually got less resistance in Austin. Now, don't get me wrong, there is a vegan crowd, a health-centric crowd that doesn't really believe what we believe when it comes to holistic health, including cardiovascular health and all these things. So I did get some pushback. But what was really fun about Austin is when you move to a new city and you're like on fire for what you do and you're really passionate about it, people can feel the passion. And so I didn't really have dogmatic discussions. Like I know I was at Barton Springs, which is like this spring fed giant municipal pool, and like Zilker, which is this off leash dog park, or going out to open mic nights. And I was just really experiencing the city. And when I had these conversations about what I did, I wasn't shy about sharing the diet. And it was quite controversial, but because I was passionate about it and I didn't say that this is the way, it's like, this is what I believe, it drew people in. They were curious. And then I had these great discussions where I had to kind of not defend my point, but allow them to appropriately challenge me and think about, well, they might be right, but let me share my beliefs and why. And then we actually had some really good discussions. And I'm friends with a lot of those people today, even though they don't necessarily eat the way that I eat. And I think that was really fruitful, pun intended as well. But I don't know that that would have happened in Virginia, honestly, because people in Austin, I think, are much more willing. It's just part of the city's, I don't want to say aura because it sounds a little woo-woo, but the style of the city is very much collaborative and open-minded versus cut and dry or black and white.
Yeah, you get two sides of a coin sometimes. It's like I think more people are interested, and I have conversations with a lot of people all the time. It's like I feel that people come to me more for like I'm carnivore, but I'm a primal aligned diet. I try to
Mm,
have very like if I'm gonna have fruit or whatever, it's gonna be few and far between. Try to get the best source I can, and then mostly carnivore. Like that's my bag.
yeah.
And people just see me like eating tons of meat at a time, and they're like, that's all you do, and I'm like, mostly. So you get the curiosity going, and they're
Hmm.
like, and I talked to them about it. They're like, oh, like talk to me about my bathroom usage. They talk to me about, what's your cholesterol? I'm like, it's up there. It's up there. And then you get the other thing of like, oh, you can't do that. You can't. No,
Hmm.
that's wrong. And I'm like, I think I'm okay.
Yeah.
But you get both sides, and so now you need to you find kind of like what you love to do at Heart and Soil, and then you make a shift and
Hmm.
you kind of go on your own. Why'd you make a shift to go into coaching?
It was really tough, honestly, especially because, I was really getting positive reinforcement for all the work that I was doing there. I was able to go on webinars, coach people, manage a team of other people, coaching people, influencing the company to a small degree. I worked up into leadership there and learning a lot from Paul and also Dylan Randolph, who is a guy who you don't hear a lot. He founded the company. He started the company with Paul, and he's like the chief research officer, and he taught me a lot too. But he's really into the weeds with the research and the health and how the education facing front of Heart and Soil. And so working with him and for him, and it was just so rewarding. But what I realized is that I think I'm specifically talented in a certain phase of a company's evolution. And I think Heart and Soil started to get beyond that phase. And it's just like a relationship, right? I almost hate how business and relationships and health have these parallels because I want them to be different, but there's what I believe to be universal truths. And one of those is setting expectations. So when I joined, I thought this expectation of how the company was going to be as it grew, and it shifted, and it probably needed to, but I was still rooted in like, oh, this is what I signed up for. So as it evolved, I just found that even though I love the people and I love the mission, I wasn't really doing what I was hired to do originally, and I didn't really like where my role was heading. And it took me a little bit to identify that. And I had opinions of how a company like that should be grown, but I didn't know. I had never done it before. And so I had these opinions, and I was like, well, maybe instead of having these opinions and being kind of the squeaky wheel, maybe I should just try it myself, and so I left on good terms. And if for some reason the coaching isn't what I would want to do going forward, I know that I have good relationships with them. I believe in the mission, and they'll always be my family. So it made it really hard to leave with all that positive experience and reinforcements. But there's something deep down that told me there's something else I should be doing. I need to try this because I'll kick myself if I never try it. And so I, developed this coaching program and took the leap of faith. I didn't, transition out. I just said, I'm done. Gave like a 30-day notice because I really wanted to leave, like do right by them. I didn't want to leave quickly. And then I jumped into doing coaching full time. And that was a little over a year ago now.
Nice. I mean, yeah, it's a big jump, but you seem to have kind of find your stride and find your passion. And I mean, if you're gonna there's the ring. You're gonna go for that ring off the
Mm-hmm.
carousel kind of deal, and that's
Yeah.
awesome. I love when people kind of pursue their passions. Now, the three things that I kind of want to talk about today is what you kind of deem as the trifecta of wealth, and we
Mm.
parse this out in a couple different pieces here, but physical health, psychological health, and interpersonal health. So we kind of talked about physical a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
uh, in your opinion or your vision for that, what does that look like?
I think it's first really important to identify wealth in this context because wealth typically means finances, money. And I'm not saying that either of those things are evil, but I really believe true wealth are the things that can't be stripped from you. You earn them, and they increase your quality of life and so many other things. The things that money can't buy. That's true wealth to me. And so the way that I see it, the large categories that you can break that down into are the ones that you just named, right? Physiological health, psychological health, interpersonal health. And physiological health is pretty obvious, but for a broad overview, it's like, are you functionally capable to do the things that you want in life, whether that's sports or working out, or with men and women as they age, to have experiences in the bedroom that are pleasure oriented, and can you do those things? Because people lose the ability to do that. Can you even do things in your life like walk the dog, pick up a heavy box, or like put something on the shelf? And so I think that's a kind of wealth that has longevity as we age that you can't buy. Your body breaks down, so you might as well invest in it and love what you do with it. And the psychological portion of that is kind of what I touched on earlier. It's a lot of, I think, self-love, as kind of cliche as a term as that is, confidence. And I do think they're related. It's difficult to divorce them from one another, because when you build that health foundation, physiologically, it does pour over into your psychological health. And it gives you this, I don't want to say like superhero complex, right? But it's like, oh, if I can change my health for the better, now I can do anything. And so then the doors are blown off the hinges for whatever was gatekeeping you before, and you're able to step into other things in life, whether that's starting your own business, or stepping into a relationship, or overcoming things you've struggled with for years. So I see the physiological investment as a fuel almost for the psychological health side of things, again, which you can't buy. Psychological health, like we see, there's a ton of wealthy people that I know here in Austin and that I've met before, or traditionally successful people, and the one thing I see is that they don't have all the time psychological and physiological health. And it's because they can't buy it, and they want it. Those are the things, once they've had everything, those are the things you're still drawn to, because they feel incomplete without them. Not all of them, right? But I see it happen quite a lot with people who, again, are traditionally successful, which brings me to the last one, is interpersonal relationships. And I know for me personally, I am not good in relationships, whether romantic or friendships, if I don't have my health dialed in, because I'm not in a good headspace, and I don't have the capacity to be empathetic and loving and patient, tolerant, curious, and I kind of retreat until I can build my health back out and the psychological health back out, and then I'm really, really flourishing in my connections, business and otherwise, romantic relationships and otherwise. So I just think that those three things, not only do they build off each other, but they're the three things in this life that you will never, ever be able to purchase. And so why not invest in those and prioritize those in our daily lives in a way that's sustainable? And that's, again, why I'm a big balance guy too.
And, checking the boxes and making sure that you're functional, you can do all of the things that is demanding of you on the day to day, and eating right, exercising. But the physiological piece, yeah, you might even fit the part on that physical, that psychological. Is there things that people can do? And because you get it from all over, like, oh, you need a journal, you need to do this, you need to do that. Or there's some tips that you can give people what they can do to kind of help with that aspect of the trifecta.
That's a really good question, because it's not as obvious as some of and it's not as talked about. And I don't think it's like, I can't list a few things that work for everybody. I would say write down the things that you're drawn to, that you've heard, that you haven't tried, or maybe that you've tried and you really like. And then ask yourself, which one of these fits seamlessly into my daily, weekly, monthly life that I won't have resistance to? Which of these would I look forward to? Which of these can I envision really having a positive impact on my psychological health? And start with those and experiment, right? 30 days, you can do anything for 30 days. If you don't, I don't have time for this, or I'm too busy, I don't really like those expressions, but it's rather, okay, what can I prioritize without the other things that either have to do or want to do taking a toll? So it's like, pick a few of these habits that help with psychological health and experiment for 30 days. And if you feel a net benefit, then keep it up and try something else, and just keep adding to the pie. And before you know it, they're all working at a subconscious level versus having to feel like it's an obligation or a checkbox, or even like an investment of your finite resources, because it should give you more than it takes away, but you only know by trying. And obviously there's things like journaling, I also like to stack things. I think walking is super underrated, not for the steps and for the metabolism, but sunshine, air quality outside. And then if you let your mind off the leash and just let it think, it's amazing how it takes care of its own trash. I don't know if that's a good way to say it, but basically, and I don't know if everyone is this way, but I'm always thinking strategically, analyzing or doing all these other things. But when I go on a walk, if I leave my phone and I just let my mind wander, it's amazing the things that come up that I forget about. It's almost like meditation in motion. And then I'm able to, instead of having like sweeping under the rug, and then there's just this giant mound in your cerebral living room floor that you're tripping over, and it's embarrassing when guests come in. You're like pulling these things from out of the rug and you're solving them like a Rubik's Cube, and you're setting them to the side. And then it's one less thing you have to worry about. And I think people don't realize the mental impact it can have to keep shoving things under the rug and never addressing it. So anything that's going to help you sort through those things that doesn't add stress to your life through the act of sorting through them is something that someone should try.
It's not what we could add, it's what we could take away.
Yeah, yeah.
And for this next piece, this is going to be the nuts and bolts here. This
Okay.
this interpersonal health, because all the female listeners want to know, what do guys want? All the male listeners want to know, what do the girls want? And Chris is here to give us a special sauce.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't
Answering
have.
all the questions. You know
Yeah,
all the answers.
I don't have all the answers, and it's like you said before with charcuterie board. I haven't tried all the things, but I've tried a lot. But I think that the special sauce is in trying so many things, even on the dating side of things. It's like, you know, you can try to play games, you can try the apps, you can try being direct, whatever. Try all the things and see what feels right. For me personally, and for the guys that I've worked with, especially, I don't think that playing games is the way to go, right? There's these rules, these unwritten rules of like, oh, you have to withhold certain things to keep the mystery up for the woman. You can't text her, you can't double text her, you can't let her know right after the date or even before the first date is over if you want to see her again. You have to build this suspense. And I think it's just a personal preference thing. I think we overcomplicate this just like we do health. We just need to return back to the basics and say, okay, what's worked for me? Right? Or what am I drawn to intuitively? Because with dating, what I've found, and what other people I've worked with have found is that being unabashedly yourself, not playing games, stating clearly what you want, but also being patient enough to learn about the other person. So you're not pushing them to make decisions about you or your situation, is the best way to go about things, because there's a million variables and it's infinitely more stressful to try to understand how a complex person works, especially like a man trying to understand a woman. Why not just be the man you want to be, let her witness that, and then if you guys connect over each other being your authentic, unabashed version of yourselves, then you move forward with that connection. You keep exploring instead of having this pressure of like, here's my checkbox. I'm on a date with this person. Do they check it all off? Oh, they have everything but this. Sayonara. It's more like, okay, this person is an unexplored adventure, a book that I've never read, even if some of the chapters are similar. So let me get this in its entirety and see if it attracts me. But then as soon as you realize, because sometimes you only get 5 pages deep into a book and realize you don't want to read the rest of it. Instead of forcing yourself to read the rest, if you're not drawn to it, then I say, lovingly put the book down. And if the book, I feel like I'm really comparing women and men to inanimate objects at the moment, but put the book down. If it asks you why you put it down, give it an honest, kind answer and move on. Because what I've seen in terms of like the magic sauce, yes, it's about being radically transparent. Yes, it's about being kind and unabashedly yourself and not trying to conform to what you think someone else wants you to be. But it's also about not ghosting people. And if people ask, closing the loop is the kindest thing that you can do for someone. And if you're on the receiving end of that, it's probably something you desire too. And so I think, yeah, those are the simple secret sauces, the things that really add up when people are single and really trying to find a partnership.
And I've heard you talk kind of about when somebody is in a relationship and they're putting too much into the relationship
Mm.
versus working on themselves on the outside. How does that affect? Because I feel like there's when people get into relationships, they drop who they are a little bit, and it's just
Mhm.
about the relationship.
That one's tough because to a degree we have to compromise, and I think that's a really productive endeavor to invest in, because especially as men, obviously I can't speak from a women's perspective. I think sometimes we get wrapped up in what we want to do and we don't realize that serving people is the most fulfilling thing that we can do. Having a mission and a purpose, and giving ourselves to that. Obviously, we don't want to lose ourselves in the process, but I like to see or view relationships as an ability to serve through compromise, but not compromising on who you are and your long-term desires and your fundamentals, but compromising on the things that are reasonable to compromise on is a really beneficial developmental practice. And so surely you can overdo that, right? It's like a pendulum, right? Typically people, they either give too much and they lose themselves and they build up resentment, and then the next relationship will swing back and maybe they don't give enough, so there's no compromises, and they're just saying, this is my life, you can be part of it or not. And I think reality is we're somewhere in the middle where we don't lose ourselves, but we're also open to becoming better because of the person that we are not just compromising with, but growing with, because they're going to challenge us in ways we wouldn't be able to challenge ourselves on our own. And I have this concept that I'm writing about. It's one of like the 13 principles in this book. 1 + 1 = 4. And that's in a relationship. It shouldn't be simple addition. When you combine together, it should have this multiplicative exponential growth component. And the only way that happens is by you being yourself, but also open to the challenge the other person presents for you. And together, if you're both growing, you will actually expedite that process, and you'll actually have like build complex layers with each other as you grow. And that's true for me. I wouldn't have started this business as fast as I did. I wouldn't have taken the leap of faith if my girlfriend hadn't believed in me so much and seen what I couldn't see in myself in that moment. And there's other people like her in my life that have championed me. So 1 + 1 = 4 is also prevalent in other relationships, right? Whether that's familial or friendships, right? Anyone who's holding you accountable is going to challenge you appropriately, and also have a high expectation, because sometimes, like we talked about earlier, really tough on ourselves. That's the relationships that really help you grow. And I don't think that we should settle for anything less than that in a romantic relationship.
Mic drop. Boom. And I like how you just nonchalantly like added this in of like, because this book is like a passion project, right?
Yeah, it's been 9 months in the making so far, and it's got a lot of work, but it is a passion project, and I'm very excited about it.
I think this is, and I think it's just the craziness of modern world. You need to have some of these tools in your toolbox when
Mm-hmm.
dating, and then like you mentioned the apps and things like that. That's hard. It's a
Mm.
hard thing. There's lots of options. And you mentioned the check boxes, like if they don't check the box, but because it's so easy to be like, nope, 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 yes,
Mm.
yes, yes. And there's just these cares like this turnstile that
Yeah,
you got lined up. And that's kind of tough. But do you have a name for the book yet?
I have a few working titles,
Gotcha.
and yeah, I don't know. I think I'm leaning towards one, but I don't know if I want to reveal it just yet. But it's essentially, it has to do with having guidelines, flexible guidelines for the modern man to date with integrity. Because obviously I can't write about the women's perspective, but there during, so I got divorced, and I'd been in that relationship for 5 years, and she's a wonderful person. We're just not meant to be. So I learned a lot from that. And especially because the last 2.5 or 3 years of relationship were particularly challenging. So that's the closest I got to being in a very poor mental health state, like I had before. The only time since middle school, high school, that I felt I wasn't wanting to or considering doing the same thing, but I was just mentally in much more poor health, because every day and every night, the first and last thing I thought about when I woke up or went to bed was like, this is really tough. I don't know how this is going to work out. And that takes a toll on you. And so when I was free of that and I moved to Austin for this in this beautiful city full of life with this job I was passionate about. I was like, all right, now that I've healed from that, I am ready to find a partnership again. And I'd never been on the apps before. I never really dated in the metropolitan area. And most of the time I found a a woman I was interested in through community, a job, whatever, small town stuff. So I was like, I don't know what I'm doing in this landscape. And at first, I didn't realize that like women were not responsive because they were inundated with matches. I thought these girls were matching with me and then just choosing not to respond. And so I had to learn a lot of things about the apps. I had to learn how to approach women in the wild in a metropolitan area that was not only appropriate, but like effective. And then I had to go through all these battles. I had to kind of recreate myself because I didn't realize there were leftover confidence or mental health issues from when I was younger. So I stopped drinking. I went out by myself until I got confident making friends with strangers and being out alone and not having friends. And then I started approaching women in the wild, going on the apps and trying to obviously convert those to dates. And I went on 54 first dates in the calendar year. In fact, I was dating a girl for 3 months. So it's really 9 months, which averages out to like 1.5 dates a week. Doesn't sound like a ton, but it takes a lot of effort. But I think it's because I had my health dialed in. My mental health was dialed in. I love what I did for work. So my side quest, where I put all my extra energy, was trying to find the right woman. And so I'm dating Courtney. I don't think you met her. She was there one of the days. She's wonderful, and she's far beyond what I would have ever expected for myself years ago. But I don't think I would have got there had I not been through divorce and separation, had I not had to recreate myself and maybe 10x the guy I was prior. And then going through all of these dates or putting all this effort into dating, a lot of guys think, oh, it's not worth the effort or the money or the time. But it not only helped me be in a relationship with a girl like Courtney, but it also helped me build skills for speaking, interviewing, being curious, discovering, even I think some skills that helped me in my coaching business. And I didn't know that, but there was all of these, again, happy byproducts to this very long and strenuous and time inducing process. But I think that's one of the biggest things, whether it's health or dating or business or whatnot, is reframes, choosing to view something as working for you instead of against you. So I looked at, like, when I look back at divorce, I viewed it that way. I saw, wow, now I know where I struggle and where I excel, and I can work on where I struggle, and I can lean into what I excel at. And I know what I need in a relationship. So it was very revealing, right? It's just like these other experiments and health. And so the book was never, I didn't go on all these dates planning to write a book. But I had some friends, like I talked about, these 1+1=4 friends that challenged me. And they're like, dude, you talk about this a lot. You're good at giving guys advice. You should just write this all down. It's like, I've never done that before. So then I started writing it, and then I sectioned it out into these 13 principles. And it's a long-winded way of saying these 13 principles are the things that I stumbled into doing because it allowed me to date with integrity, to meet high caliber women and have beautiful experiences, even if we weren't meant to be together long term, and that I could leave most of the time the experience on a good note where I thought I was being kind to them. So it took less of my time, and it took less negative emotions, or rather there's less output of negative emotions for both parties. And it was just a loose guideline to help me operate with peace of mind, knowing that I was making steps towards finding the right woman and not leaving a hurricane of disaster in the background.
Yeah, and kudos to you, man, because I know how hard it can be to kind of put yourself out there, especially coming off of I was never married. I was engaged at one point, and it was just a like low, it wasn't the right relationship for me. And it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to step away. And when you do step away, it's hard to put yourself back out there.
Yeah.
And you were talking about the reframing, and it's, I have buddies that have just been recently divorced, and they're in their 30s, and it's really hard for them if you have this past with this person, and you really don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. You're just kind of stuck at where you're at. But putting yourself out there, like you were saying, and just doing these different experiences and experimenting with yourself of things that you like to do, trying the apps, meeting people, and just taking the first step, that
Yeah.
leap, it's tough. It's tough,
Mm-hmm.
but you got to take that first step. And yeah, kudos to you, man, for putting yourself out there.
Thanks, man.
Um, for people that want to work with you, let's kind of talk, because you mentioned like you're talking about more of the men, and I just kind of want to see if you do work with any females, but who's your target client, and what can they expect from you if you guys work together?
I thought out of the gates that I needed to niche down immediately. But what I'm realizing with business, it's similar to dating and health. I have to experiment with people and find out where do I belong and who am I supposed to serve. And so I started out teaching people how to eat animal based, and then I went into blood work and hormones, and then I went into time blocking, stress management, and then I went into relationships. And so at this point, it's just a very holistic view. And so the people I work with now are primarily men. I have a few female clients, mostly for the health side of things, though, not the relationship side of things. But the guys that come work with me, they're either health, relationships, or both, because they do intertwine for the reasons we talked about, right? You get your health in check, and it's like, wow, I'm more confident. I can talk to women. I can attract the kind of woman and secure the kind of woman that I used to only dream about. And so they're related, and you have to be in a good mental health state in order to put all these pieces together. So long-winded way of saying anybody under those umbrellas who wants to learn by doing is the kind of client for me, because a lot of people want something, but they don't know the first steps to take. And because of all the experiments I've done and the thousands of people I've worked with, I can hold them accountable and say, all right, let's reverse engineer your goal, what you want, and let's start experimenting. Let's try things. And then if it doesn't work, we'll push to the side and try something else. And then over a few months, we build out this sustainable lifestyle, essentially, for both the health goals, but also the relationship goals. And it's just really magical to see people transform, especially because in a world where people are trying to tell you definitive things, I am not the only one, but I'm one of few people that's like, let's make it specific to you. And I don't know the answers, but we're going to find out the answers for you together. Because a lot of people, they want to seem powerful by saying, this is the diet, this is the way to pick up a girl. And I just don't, I think it's more nuanced than that. So I really like working with people who understand that there's nuance. They're just not sure how to start, and I can help them get the momentum.
I love that aspect, and because again, that dogma piece of this is the way, no, this is the way, and people are butting heads. I think you got to figure these things out for yourself.
Yeah.
And and before you go, we're gonna have to talk about this: egg yolks in the hair.
Yeah.
Let's hear about this. I was just kind of scrolling through, popping in a couple videos, and you're like,
Yeah.
shampoo time, egg yolks in the hair.
Hmm. I have to credit Connor Aurelius, because I think that was the first time I heard of that, probably like 3 or 4 years ago, or 3 years ago. But I've been, one of the experiments I've done, not related to diet, but more related to lifestyle, is natural hygiene. And honestly, that has been one of the tougher ones, because it's like it's difficult to find clean products that work. And sometimes, your hair gets funky for a while, or you ruin some shirts that you liked. Lemon deodorant, it technically works, but then if you don't get it off every day, it gets in your clothes, it doesn't get out, and then it goes rancid. And so there's a lot of elements that make it risky, especially from like a scent or an appearance perspective. But it took me about 7 years to nail down what feels good for me, and I'm still experimenting a little bit. But the egg yolks for shampoo is wildly effective. The thing with hair, whether you're a man or a woman, is you produce a certain amount of oils, and hot water and also certain soaps strip those oils away, which you think would be a good thing. But if you strip it every day, then you build more oils and your hair gets more oily. So I only use egg yolks as shampoo once every 6 to 8 weeks right now. And my hair stays fairly clean unless I'm like in and out of chlorine pools, or like in the sauna, I'm running my hands through my hair. Then sometimes I'll increase the frequency, but it stays very clean and smell free. You can ask my girlfriend, she'll corroborate. For just using one to two egg yolks every few weeks. And now I don't have these harmful shampoos and conditioners that I also feel like I have to use every day that strip my oils and things like that. I use tallow for moisturizer, like none of these crazy tallow products, just straight beef tallow when I need to, maybe once or twice a week, if my skin's feeling dry. And I try to use like baking soda based soaps. I do that for the laundry detergent as well, just vinegar and baking soda essentially, and some like maybe really clean natural detergents on top of that. And it's just amazing what that stuff does. But that's really tough because it's a long acclimation period for like the oils in your skin and your hair. So if you're going to do those experiments, for anyone listening, I think they're amazing because I have so many less products. I spend less money on the hygiene products, but it's fickle. So you have to really slowly acclimate, and you have to be really determined to try these things over the long course of time. Because if you just switch naturally, it's not going to give you, or instantly, it's not going to give you the results that you want. But yeah, people think it's wild, but it's the egg yolks, especially, man. It's crazy. How have you tried it?
This is the first time I'm hearing about this. I
Yeah.
was like, did this guy just crack an egg in the shower?
You have to try it and you have to let me know. Um, it doesn't have necessarily a conditioning effect, but it will get rid of all of the crud. Um, Especially if you give it like a good scrub. But then what I like to do is use salt water in the shower as natural conditioner, and then like a little bit of tallow, like maybe like half of a dime, and you just work that through, put it on your face first, and what's left you can put it in your hair. In between the salt water and the tallow, you'll feel like you're using hair product without, any of the hair product.
It's very interesting. And this is like, again, this is a whole conversation for another. This could be a whole podcast, but just these everyday things, items that you can do. I don't like my toothpaste right now. I forgot what the heck the brand is, but it doesn't have fluoride in it, right?
Yeah.
I took a little step,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'm not gonna have toothpaste because there's the people like, you don't need toothpaste, you need none of that, but I want toothpaste.
Yeah, yeah.
Deodorant, like I do still use deodorant, just the non-aluminum one. I think I do like
Mm-hmm.
an Everyman Jack. So I'm taking the small steps, but I mean, some people are going like, it's like there's no microplastics anywhere to be found.
Yeah.
There's no shampoo, no nothing. And again, finding the balance in what works for your life.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, yeah, we could have a whole other podcast on all that stuff. But
We could too.
I
Yeah.
will I will try. So what, one every 8 weeks?
I would say if you're starting out, how often do you use shampoo right now?
I try not to do it every day. Probably like 3 days, 4 days out of the week, maybe. I do like I forgot what kind of product I got.
Yeah.
Some health shampoo. I
I
don't even
would
know.
use I would use one egg yolk every other day, and then after a week, make it one egg yolk every 3 days, and then the next week just do like two egg yolks once a week, and do that for a couple weeks and see how you feel. And then you could probably do two every two, yeah, just like anything else, like kind of what's the word? Gradual, not gradual wasn't what I was looking for, but we'll use it. Gradually just change over time. And a real quick thing, what you talked about, I think that's really good. And in all of my long stories, I didn't touch on any of it. And I think it's very wise of you to say, and that's why I want to emphasize it, is it doesn't have to be these extreme changes. Like there's a diminishing return for making sure like you don't have any, like you're not drinking out of any plastic, there's no microplastics in anything. I know it's a big health benefit, but it's like it's easy to get low or no microplastic salt. So I think that's something people should do, because it's like easy, just buy the right salt and then it's around. But it's like to avoid all plastic in your entire home, that's very difficult. There's probably a diminishing return. And what percentage of your health will that affect? It's like there's certain battles or hills that we should die on, and there's certain ones that we should let go because we can't win every battle. And I think that's what you were alluding to. And so when it comes to health products, like I don't look down on anyone that chooses to use shampoo or conditioner or toothpaste. I mean, I use toothpaste. I have a tallow based deodorant that I sometimes use. I don't think there's anything wrong with any of that. It's like what are you willing to do without it adding stress to your life, right? Like not only what you can afford literally, but what can you afford to do from a time and attention standpoint? Because if you ever finding there's a lot of resistance to doing these health things, or you ever find that you are feeling like they're obligatory and you're resenting them, then you've gone too far, is a kind of my barometer for that.
No, that's great advice. I love that. And for people that want to work with you or connect with you, what's the best way they can get a hold of you? Is via Instagram or website?
Yeah. So I love chatting with people, connecting on Instagram. It's Animal Bates, which is the pun on the diet plus my last name, because I go by Bates in most circles. So Animal Bates. Same thing for the website. It's animalbates.com. I have a free ebook on hormone optimization / like circadian rhythm and routine there. That's a really good resource, and there's more information on my coaching there. And then I recently started a YouTube channel. It's also Animal Baits, and I cover a little bit of everything. I'm planning to put up some of my experiments and some of like the blood work, DEXA scan, workouts, nutrition aspects of what I'm experimenting with currently. Also summarizing some of my previous experiments, sharing some client testimonies and wins and the things that they've taught me as I've worked for them. And also things like the nuance with chronometer and Whoop and some of these other gadgets I use that help me measure my health metrics.
Uh, awesome. And I can't wait to get you back on another time, and best of luck with the book and everything and the coaching and the new home out in Austin. So,
Yeah.
thanks again for coming on. I appreciate it. This was awesome.
It's been great, Tony. And I wanted to say, while we're recording, even though I said it before, is like I could really tell that you did your research. I don't think enough podcasters are doing that nowadays. So I appreciate it a lot, and I don't take it lightly to have been invited on and been able to be asked such great questions. So appreciate you.
I appreciate that. And thanks for everybody listening to the Primal Foundations podcast.
See y'all.